In June 1964, Himeji Castle, one of Japan's national treasures, emerged once again in all its original beauty after 8 years of repair work. If the architectural style of Japan's temples corresponds closely to the aesthetic ideals of ancient China, then this castle, with its stout white walls, has a beauty that is uniquely Japanese. A flower viewing party in the donjon. But where is the light of old that shone through the branches of the ancient pine, casting its reflection in the cups of wine? The glow from the sky remains the same, but fortune's tide ebbs and flows. The moon sheds its light on the ruined castle, as if to show life's vicissitudes. The ruins of a castle are an invitation to dream. Once upon a time, a general, greedy for power, plotted within these walls. The walls themselves were built by oppressed and suffering peasants, forced to labor when the general ordered them. This is an example of a type of castle that utilized a rapid river as a natural moat and was sited on top of a mountain peak. In the early Middle Ages, Japanese castles were fortresses high on mountains, guarded by natural ramparts. In peacetime, the warriors lived in mansions at the foot of the mountain, but when the fighting began, they entrenched themselves in the high castle. The latter part of the Middle Ages was a time of civil war in Japan. The mountain castles became obsolete as fighting grew more intense and widespread. Not only were the structures inconvenient for living purposes, they were not suited for maintaining a large force either. So the castles came down from the mountains. Now they were built on small elevations in the middle of a plain. They were called hilltop castles. In 1543, firearms were introduced into Japan from Portugal. The old hand-to-hand fighting gave way to battles staged between large, well-organized armies. Castle walls grew higher and more formidable to withstand armed assault. For protection against artillery, the donjons and turrets were thickly plastered. The castle had come down from the mountain top to a hill in the plains. Now it settled down in the middle of the plain itself, in the open. The end of this period saw increasing integration and centralization of the warrior clans, and the fighting decreased. The castle became more than a base for military strategy. It became an administrative center for local government. In the year 1600, at Sekigahara near Kyoto, the lords of eastern and western Japan fought a great battle. The army of the East won, and its supreme commander, Tokugawa Ieyasu, established a basis for national unity. The technique of castle construction reached its peak in the decisive years around 1600, and its culmination in Himeji Castle. Himeji Castle was the headquarters for Tokugawa Ieyasu's defense of the West in his campaign to become the leader of a unified nation. Himeji Castle is also called White Heron Castle. Some anonymous person a long time ago must have noticed that the castle looks like a heron with its wings outstretched, and the informal name stuck. Himeji Castle is built on two hills. It's surrounded by moat from the northeast. The main gate lies at the south end. North of the main gate are, in turn, the third outwork, the second outwork, and the west outwork. The main outwork lies in the innermost area where the donjon is sited. These quarters are each surrounded by stone walls and moats. A turret stands at every crucial point, and the quarters are connected with each other only by a narrow gateway. The ground plan of the Himeji Castle compound is very complex. It's superbly designed to withstand attack. The donjon is the focal point of the castle, the commanding general's post, and the final stronghold in battle. The routes to the donjon of Himeji Castle, in particular the routes leading from the Hishinomon Gate, the entrance to the second outwork, are laid out like complicated mazes and indicate the skill with which a castle was constructed. Let's imagine that an enemy force is attacking by the route to the left. First, the attackers are confronted by the Hishinomon Gateway. Even if the attackers manage to force their way through the Hishinomon Gate, they'll be met by shots from the main castle force at Gate A. The enemy would also be subjected to a barrage from the Uzuminomon Gate, an entranceway hidden in the stone wall to the right. Attacked from two sides, the enemy can do nothing but flee and will be forced into the moat. The invading enemy will suffer considerable losses in their initial attack. On the left side of the moat are loopholes for guns, from which another barrage rains down on the enemy. Archers can shoot arrows through these rectangular slits. The other openings are for firearms. The route from Gate B to Gate C turns into a steep and narrow path. If Gate C can be taken, then the donjon lies just ahead. But the path grows gradually steeper until it runs into a high stone wall. Now the path turns abruptly in exactly the opposite direction from the donjon, and Gate D lies ahead. Gate D is a tunnel passageway and cannot be negotiated without stooping. Approaching Gate E, the attackers finally arrive at the entrance to the main outwork where the donjon lies. The gateways come more closely together now, and the path unexpectedly starts to slope down a little. Even if the enemy manages to penetrate this far, can it actually hope to reach the donjon? The attackers are already beginning to lose heart. The route to the donjon is a baffling labyrinth. It twists and winds over 2.5 times the actual distance of 130 meters from the first gate to the donjon. These are the openings through which guns and arrows are fired. Gates are an essential part of the defense. Originally 84 gateways in the castle compound kept out the enemy. Only 21 remain today. This is the platform from which rocks were hurled down on the enemy as it tried to scale the stone wall. The first fortress on this site was built in 1580, at the height of the civil wars. After the Battle of 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu, now ruler of the whole country, presented the Himeji area as fief domain to Lord Ikeda Terumasa, who built the Himeji Castle that we know today on the foundation of the former structure. The fief lord Ikeda Terumasa started to build his castle in 1601. The castle took 9 years to complete. But it was not the proud warrior who built and plastered the walls and turrets. The common people of the countryside and innumerable nameless peasants and craftsmen did that. During the 9 years it took to build the castle, hundreds of thousands of peasants and small farmers were conscripted for the labor. The castle devoured all the stone from the quarry and then demanded more. Gravestones, stone gods, stone lanterns, anything made of stone was pressed into service. In those days of feudal strife, even gods and gravestones meant no more than the stone of which they were made when there was a wall to be built. Even a stone coffin from the grave of an ancient ruler has been built into the wall. But perhaps the stones could not be disturbed with impunity. When the castle was completed in 1609, its lord, Ikeda Terumasa, is said to have suffered from the visitations of ghosts every night. "48 lords from 13 different families ruled in succession from this castle. Their respective family crests are shown on the slate roof ends. These crests span the 300 years from the time the castle was built until the old feudal system crumbled in 1868. In the western quarter of Himeji Castle compound are turrets, a long, narrow corridor-like building divided into many rooms, and other buildings that altogether form a long semicircle. Beyond the long corridor stands the Kesho turret. In this turret, close to the donjon, the Lord's lady used to repair for her makeup. Beyond her ladyship's boudoir are the quarters of the castle's womenfolk. Within the castle, with its swords, guns, and the reek of gunpowder, lay these rooms, full of the scent of perfume and cosmetics. Even after Japan's modern age began, the castle symbolized the countryside it had once dominated for all who lived there. The donjon and turrets of Himeji Castle are constructed so that they change subtly according to which angle they're viewed from. The castle's design superbly combines beauty and utility. It was the seat of warfare, yet it's also architecturally magnificent. The gable board juts from the roof. The triangular or curved gable boards are combined to form complex designs. The roof shows the subtle beauty of curving lines which developed from the technique of wooden architecture. To his enemies, the castle keep was the image of the power of the Lord. To his subjects, it symbolized his authority. The white-plastered outer wall uses the techniques of the go-downs of village architecture. The graceful design of the ogive window set in the white-plastered wall was borrowed from ancient temple architecture. The ogive design itself is believed to have originated in India. The Himeji donjon comprises the main donjon plus 3 smaller subsidiary ones, so that when the enemy force was trapped in the courtyard below, it could be attacked from 4 sides, thus rendering the castle virtually impregnable. The courtyard is surrounded by the 4 donjons. The side facing the courtyard, unlike the outer side, is safe from direct enemy attack, so windows have been set in the walls to provide sufficient light. The entrance to the ground floor of the donjon faces the courtyard. There's only one entrance. From the ground floor of the donjon to just below the top sixth floor level are two immense pillars. These pillars support the entire 5,000-ton weight of the structure. In a corner of the ground floor, there's a sink to provide kitchen facilities exclusively for times of siege. The defenders would fight on here, even if the rest of the castle had fallen to the enemy. In contrast to the splendor of its exterior, the castle interior is simple and stoutly built. On the walls are pegs for holding spears and firearms. The narrow stairway is steep, and the higher one climbs, the steeper it gets. The stone walls are 15 meters high. The height of the building, 31 meters. The height of the donjon of Himeji Castle, 41 meters. This is the top floor of the donjon. Here the general commanded the battle, and here, if he was defeated and the castle fell to the enemy, he would commit suicide in order to preserve his honor. The gently slanting roof, its graceful curving lines, the gable board rising above the roof. The castle is a monument to the culture of the warriors of old. Its architecture is a harmonious blend of the styles of shrine and temple with the rustic simplicity of peasant go-down architecture. This is the culmination of an architectural style. Himeji Castle, the most beautiful of all Japan's castles.